Well, Dr. Jung, we have been discussing in some detail some of the factors in the development of the personality of the individual, and you have very kindly elaborated for us on some of your fundamental concepts, such as the archetype, and at least simply what it means, and certain types of archetypes such as the anima and the animus, and we try to show, perhaps in our discussion, some of the ways that your ideas may have differed from those of Dr. Freud. Now, another concept or idea that seems to be a very interesting one in your work, at least as I see it, is the term or concept persona. And of course, this seems to have a lot of relevance to the daily living of the individual. I wonder if you would mind telling us a little bit about how you construe this term persona.
Well, this is a practical concept we need in elucidating people's relation. I noticed with my patients, particularly with people that are in public life, that they have a certain way of presenting themselves. For instance, take the doctor. He has a certain way. For instance, he has good bedside manners, and he behaves as one expects a doctor behaves. He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Yes.
He must appear in a certain form, unless people don't believe that he is a doctor. And so when he's a professor, he's also supposed to behave in a certain way so that it is plausible that he is a professor, you know. So the persona is partially the result of the demands society has. And on the other side, it is a compromise with what one likes to be, or with what, or as one likes to appear. Say.
Yes.
Take, for instance, a parson. He also has his particular manner, and as corresponding to the general expectation, and he behaves also in another way, combined with his persona that is forced upon him by society, in such a way that also his fiction of himself, his idea about himself, is more or less portrayed or represented. So the persona is a certain complicated system of behavior, which is partially dictated by society and partially dictated by the expectations or the wishes one nurses oneself.
Yes.
Now, this is not the real personality, in spite of the fact that people will assure you that that is all quite real and quite honest, yet it is not.
Yes.
Now, such a performance, or say, the performance of the persona is quite all right, as long as you know that you are not identical with the way in which you appear.
Yes.
But if you are unconscious of this fact, then you get into sometimes very disagreeable conflicts. Namely, people can't help noticing that at home, for instance, you are quite different from what you appear to be in public.
Yes.
And people who don't know it stumble over it in the end. They deny that they are like that, but they are like that. They are it. And then you don't know, now, which is the real man?
Yes, yes.
Is he the man as he is at home or in intimate relations, or is he the man that appears in public? It is a question of Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes.
Often.
Yes.
It is such occasionally there is such a difference that you would almost be able to speak of the double personality.
Yes.
And the more that is pronounced, the more people are neurotic.
Yes.
They get neurotic because they have two different ways. They contradict themselves all the time, And in as much as they are unconscious of themselves, they don't know it. They think they're all one. Everybody sees that they are two.
Yes.
And some know him only from one side, so others know him only from the other side. And then there are situations that clash, because the way you are creates certain situations with people in your relations, and these two situations don't chime in, they are just dissonances.
Yes, yes.
And the more that is the case, the more the people are neurotic.
Yes. Actually, would you say that the individual may even have more than two personas? In other words, could he possibly...
Oh, rarely. You know,
rarely.
we can't afford it very well to play more than two roles. But there are cases, for instance, where people have up to 5 different personalities.
Yes.
In cases of dissociation of personality, where, for instance, the one person, say, call it person A, doesn't know of the existence of the person B.
Imagine someone you personally know and hate. Now make a list of words you would use to describe that person. Believe it or not, this list tells more about you than you realize, because this is your shadow. The shadow concept was described by Carl Jung, a heavyweight in the world of psychology, who was a close correspondent and friend of Sigmund Freud. Jung describes the shadow as the part of your subconscious that you suppress or are unaware of. A notable example of the shadow is the tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Hyde represented the dark side of Jekyll's personality, free from moral obligation and restraint. The moral of the story? We all have hidden emotions. How we choose to deal with them is up to us. Whatever you deem evil, inferior, or unacceptable, and therefore deny yourself, becomes part of your shadow. The only time we lack a shadow is when we are newborn. As we learn and gain influence from our parents, teachers, and social leaders, our shadow grows. Our shadow doesn't have to be associated with negative emotions. Positive behaviors can also be suppressed. Children interested in the arts can be driven away from their creative inclinations by their parents, often towards a more academic path. Thus, their suppressed artistic side becomes part of their shadow. So what happens when too many positive behaviors are suppressed and negative behaviors are justified? Every story through history involving a villain, whether fictional or real, shows personalities that act without remorse or empathy towards others. They take what they want, when they want it, without any reproach for their actions. Carl Jung didn't invent the shadow. He simply gave a name to the unconscious side of our personalities. Religion and philosophy have tried to describe the importance of shadow awareness for millennia. In Christianity, the shadow can be seen in the concept of sin and the fallen nature of man, and in Chinese philosophy, the concept of yin and yang. He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. Lao Tzu. So I care about seeing your shadow. Do you have a passion for something that you have been taught to forget? Have you ever had a part of your personality insulted? How did you react? Did you dismiss it, or did you stop to consider if there was some truth behind the insult? Recognizing your faults is the only way to improve yourself, and accepting your shadow is the only way to recognize those faults. Can you make yourself a better person? Knowing and facing your shadow is the key. Challenge yourself to admit truths about your personality and face your own shadow. Don't assume this is easy. You may find it more difficult than you imagine.
The anima is a personification of all feminine psychological tendencies in a man's psyche. such as vague feelings and moods, prophetic hunches, receptiveness to the irrational, capacity for personal love, feeling for nature, and, last but not least, his relation to the unconscious. It is no mere chance that in olden times priestesses, like the Greek Sibyl, were used to fathom the divine will and to make connection with the gods. In its individual manifestation, the character of a man's anima is as a rule shaped by his mother. If he feels that his mother had a negative influence on him, his anima will often express itself in irritable, depressed moods, uncertainty, insecurity, and touchiness. If, however, he is able to overcome the negative assaults on himself, they can even serve to reinforce his masculinity. Within the soul of such a man, the negative mother anima figure will endlessly repeat this theme. I am nothing. Nothing makes any sense. With others it's different, but for me, I enjoy nothing. These anima moods cause a sort of dullness, a fear of disease, of impotence, or of accidents. The whole of life takes on a sad and depressive aspect. Such dark moods can even lure a man to suicide, in which case the anima becomes a death demon. She appears in this role in Cocteau's film Orphée. The French call such an anima figure a femme fatale. A milder version of this dark anima is personified by the Queen of the Night in Mozart's Magic Flute. The Greek sirens, or the German Lorelei, also personify this dangerous aspect of the anima, which in this form symbolizes destructive illusion. The following Siberian tale illustrates the behavior of such a destructive anima. One day, a lonely hunter sees a beautiful woman emerging from the deep forest on the other side of the river. She waves at him and sings, "Oh, come, lonely hunter, in the stillness of dusk. Come, come, I miss you, I miss you. Now I will embrace you, embrace you. Come, come, my nest is near, my nest is near. Come, come, lonely hunter, now in the stillness of dusk." He throws off his clothes and swims across the river, but suddenly she flies away in the form of an owl, laughing mockingly at him. When he tries to swim back to find his clothes, he drowns in the cold river. In this tale, the anima symbolizes an unreal dream of love, happiness, and maternal warmth, her nest, a dream that lures men away from reality. The hunter is drowned because he ran after a wishful fantasy that could not be fulfilled. Another way in which the negative anima in a man's personality can be revealed is in waspish, poisonous, effeminate remarks by which he devalues everything. Remarks of this sort always contain a cheap twisting of the truth and are in a subtle way destructive. There are legends throughout the world in which a poison damsel, as they call her in the Orient, appears. She is a beautiful creature who has weapons hidden in her body or a secret poison with which she kills her lovers during their first night together. In this guise, the anima is as cold and reckless as certain uncanny aspects of nature itself, and in Europe is often expressed to this day by the belief in witches. If, on the other hand, a man's experience of his mother has been positive, this can also affect his anima in typical but different ways, with the result that he either becomes effeminate or is preyed upon by women, and thus is unable to cope with the hardships of life. An anima of this sort can turn men into sentimentalists, or they may become as touchy as old maids, or as sensitive as the fairy tale princess who could feel a pea under 30 mattresses. A still more subtle manifestation of a negative anima appears in some fairy tales in the form of a princess who asks her suitors to answer a series of riddles, or perhaps to hide themselves under her nose. If they cannot give the answers, or if she can find them, they must die, and she invariably wins. The anima in this guise involves men in a destructive intellectual game. We can notice the effect of this anima trick in all those neurotic pseudo-intellectual dialogues that inhibit a man from getting into direct touch with life and its real decisions. He reflects about life so much that he cannot live it, and loses all his spontaneity and outgoing feeling. The most frequent manifestation of the anima takes the form of erotic fantasy. Men may be driven to nurse their fantasies by looking at films and striptease shows, or by daydreaming over pornographic material. This is a crude, primitive aspect of the anima. which becomes compulsive only when a man does not sufficiently cultivate his feeling relationships, when his feeling attitude toward life has remained infantile. All these aspects of the anima have the same tendency that we have observed in the shadow. That is, they can be projected so that they appear to the man to be the qualities of some particular woman. It is the presence of the anima that causes a man to fall suddenly in love when he sees a woman for the first time and knows at once that this is she. In this situation, the man feels as if he has known this woman intimately for all time. He falls for her so helplessly that it looks to outsiders like complete madness. Women who are of fairy-like character especially attract such anima projections because men can attribute almost anything to a creature who is so fascinatingly vague and can thus proceed to weave fantasies around her. The projection of the anima in such a sudden and passionate form as a love affair can greatly disturb a man's marriage and can lead to the so-called human triangle with its accompanying difficulties. A bearable solution to such a drama can be found only if the anima is recognized as an inner power. The secret aim of the unconscious in bringing about such an entanglement is to force a man to develop and to bring his own being to maturity by integrating more of his unconscious personality and bringing it into his real life.
Jung observed that for every woman there was a masculine aspect within her psyche, the archetype of the animus, and for every man a feminine counterpart, the anima.
The anima is an archetypal form expressing the fact that a man has a minority of feminine or female genes.
Yeah.
And that is something that doesn't disappear in him. That is constantly present. And it works as a female in a man. The same is the case with the animus. That is a masculine image in a woman's mind, which is not sometimes quite conscious, sometimes it is not conscious, but it is called into life the moment that woman meets a man who says the right things. And then because he said it is all true, and he is the fellow. No matter what he is.
Yeah.
And the whole point is that the female ego has to be in charge of the animus. Now, that's not a generally accepted idea, because the old hangover of you lean on men and men will somehow make your life interesting or something, and you just lose all your own ideas or innovations or creativity. And I think a lot of women are scared out of being who they are and doing whatever is important to them still.
The animus to me is one of the most significant concepts that has arisen in Jungian psychology. It speaks of the function that connects a woman with her deepest self and personhood, her creativity, the unformed that's forming as she ages, her work, her word, her ideas, herself, her person.
In the Alfred Hitchcock film Notorious, John Beebe finds a drama of the animus in the conflict between a woman and men.
Here she comes.
Just a minute, Miss Huberman.
Hold it, Miss
Look this
Huberman.
way, would you please? We'd like a statement from you, Miss Huberman, about your father.
For instance, do you think your father got what he deserved? Could we say that you're pleased your father is going to pay the penalty for being a German worker?
Now notice the way the woman is
Let us know
badgered
if you
by
guys
a
will
series
leave
of men. All the people holding cameras are men, and all the people who speak to her are men. And so you immediately get the image of a woman in a vulnerable position, badgered by a group or a series of men. Now there's the perfect image of what Jung means by the animus. The way the animus attacks the woman and the way it's often symbolized by a multiple figure or a crowd and the way it moves in on the woman and judges her. The cameras are all in the lower left hand of the screen. And then gradually we realize that in the lower left hand there is now one man whose viewpoint we have, and he's a dark, kind of unknown figure. She's half attracted to him, half suspicious of him, wonders, is he a policeman? This is the experience of so many women of constantly being under an attack. Do I look okay? Is my reputation okay? The camera turns, and finally he becomes a personality in his own right. Indeed, he's Cary Grant.
There's one more drink left apiece. Shame about the ice.
So that the very critic, the very thing that's most attacking the woman, is also somehow the thing that's most erotically exciting and the most interesting and the most energetic. And there, in a little nutshell, you get the problem of the animus.
Jung intuited an imbalance in Western culture in favor of one whole style of psychological and behavioral functioning, in favor of analysis, in favor of logic, in favor of external achievement, in favor of social hierarchicalism and so forth. He asked, what happened to the other side?
He entered into reflection, both conscious and unconscious, at a time when, culturally, the role of women was changing and shifting. People began to protest and wanted the vote and so on. So he contributed to something which has become a movement of our times.
I think the feminine stands against organization, for example, against organized religion. It stands against hierarchy, for example, class systems. It stands against an overdependence on logic and rationality, so that the hard sciences are challenged. It stands against an excessive dependency on technology, and so it espouses natural issues, an interest in ecology, in the environment.
We women embody life. You men act upon life. That resonates psychologically, which means that we are constantly working with it in terms of our aims, our ideals, our understandings and perceptions of what it's like to be ourselves now and in life.
The still unknown relationship between what we call the unconscious psyche and what we call matter, a mystery with which psychosomatic medicine endeavors to grapple. In studying this still undefined and unexplained connection, it may prove to be that psyche and matter are actually the same phenomenon, one observed from within and the other from without. Dr. Jung put forward a new concept that he called synchronicity. This term means a meaningful coincidence of outer and inner events that are not themselves causally connected. The emphasis lies on the word meaningful. If an aircraft crashes before my eyes as I am blowing my nose, this is a coincidence of events that has no meaning. It is simply a chance occurrence of a kind that happens all the time. But if I bought a blue frock and by mistake the shop delivered a black one on the day one of my near relatives died, this would be a meaningful coincidence. The two events are not causally related, but they are connected by the symbolic meaning that our society gives to the color black. Wherever Dr. Jung observed such coincidences in an individual's life, it seemed, as the individual's dreams revealed, that there was an archetype activated in the unconscious of the individual concerned. To illustrate this by my example of the black frock, in such a case, the person who receives the black frock might also have had a dream on the theme of death. It seems as if the underlying archetype is manifesting itself simultaneously in inner and external events. The common denominator is a symbolically expressed message, in this case, a message about death. As soon as we notice that certain types of event like to cluster together at certain times, we begin to understand the attitude of the Chinese, whose theories of medicine, philosophy, and even building are based on a science of meaningful coincidences. The classical Chinese texts did not ask what causes what, but rather what likes to occur with what. One can see much the same underlying theme in astrology and in the way various civilizations have depended on consulting oracles and paying attention to omens. All of these are attempts to provide an explanation of coincidence that is different from one that depends on straightforward cause and effect. In creating the concept of synchronicity, Dr. Jung sketched a way in which we might penetrate deeper into the interrelation of psyche and matter. And it is precisely toward such a relation that the symbol of the stone seems to point. But this is still a completely open and insufficiently explored matter with which future generations of psychologists and physicists must deal. Synchronistic events almost invariably accompany the crucial phases of the process of individuation. But too often they pass unnoticed because the individual has not learned to watch for such coincidences and to make them meaningful in relation to the symbolism of his dreams.